Welcome to the lead. I'm Jake Tapper, and we start today with our world lead and a flurry of new information about the Chinese spy balloon shot down by the United States. Today, the FBI announced it has started analyzing the first pieces of the balloon at its lab in Quantico, Virginia, and senior officials say those parts could be used as evidence.
The State Department has confirmed the suspected Chinese spy balloon was operating with electronic surveillance technology capable of monitoring U.S. communications. The balloon was shot down last weekend. Officials believe solar panels that were discovered could power communication antennas.
The general in charge of NORAD, which is of course the North American Defense Initiative, General Glenn Van Herk, says intelligence from fighter jets and Canadian teams did not confirm a second balloon. The general, however, says he does believe the path of the suspected spy device traveled was purposely built to fly over portions of the United States.
Live, raw, and unfiltered, it appears that China spy balloon has now been shot down over the Atlantic Ocean. You are taking a live look here, live, raw, and unfiltered, as that balloon is...
Hey, welcome to this episode of The Soul Trap. My name is Joel Tillis, and we are glad to have you. We trust that whenever this broadcast finds you, it finds you in good health, good spirits, and most importantly, on that good and narrow way. Today, we are going to talk about balloons. That's right, balloons. We know that the balloon has already been shot down, but the question really is, what exactly was the balloon doing up there? What was going on? There's been a lot of theories, a lot of ideas, a lot of rumbling, but in a week or so, it will pass. There'll be some other strange thing that goes on, some kind of oddity that comes up. There's always something going on in the news to keep us distracted, and maybe that is actually the intent of the balloon from the very beginning, simply to keep us distracted. However, it was a very odd thing. Let's back up in time just a little bit and look at some of the news reports and refresh ourselves. From the Western Journal, they write, a Chinese spy balloon is drifting over Montana, while the Biden administration says it has no plans to shoot down the aircraft. Well, we know they actually did shoot it down after a lot of pressure was brought to bear. Quote, the United States government has detected and is tracking a high-altitude surveillance balloon that is over the continental United States right now. The balloon is currently traveling at an altitude well above commercial air traffic and does not present a military or physical threat to people on the ground. Now, you've always got to know several things. First of all, they parse their words real well. Of course, a balloon 60,000 miles in the air is not going to pose an immediate threat to somebody on the ground, we would assume. However, we don't know what the balloon was carrying at the time. We still don't. And interestingly enough, it was shot down, not over the ground, because of course they were saying they didn't want to hurt or injure civilians when the balloon comes tumbling down. But there's a lot of space in Montana, Colorado. There's a lot of space that could have brought it down. But what's interesting is they shot the balloon down over the sea so that nobody could tell, only they could recover it. Nobody could beat them to it. Another interesting thing about shooting the balloon down, now that we look back on it, is they actually, if you'll look at the video, they didn't shoot the balloon. They shot the actual mechanism that the balloon was carrying. You would think you would want to preserve that in as much tact as possible to gain as much counter-surveillance information about it as possible. However, it almost looked like they wanted to destroy it. The article at the Western Journal says that President Joe Biden agreed with advice from military leaders not to shoot the balloon down. The leaders had cautioned that the debris could be a safety threat. Quote, we wanted to make sure we were coordinating with civil authorities to empty the airspace around the potential area. But even with those protective measures taken, it was the judgment of our military commanders that we didn't drive the risk down low enough, so we didn't take the shot. Reuters said it was told them by officials. Okay. This past Thursday, the defense attorney, Secretary Lloyd Austin, Senator Steve Daines, a Republican from Montana, wrote, quote, the fact that this balloon was occupying Montana airspace creates significant concern that Malmstrom Air Force Base and the United States intercontinental ballistic missile fields are the target of this intelligence gathering mission. Is it an intelligence gathering mission? I don't know. We're not told. They state, it is vital to establish the flight path of this balloon, any compromised U.S. national security assets, and all telecom or IT infrastructure on the ground within the U.S. that has this spy balloon within its sight is in possible danger. Now, I think that's interesting. I want to pause there for just a moment. I'm going to posit maybe one theory that I think you could be seeing. They said here that we're concerned about the Malmstrom Air Force Base, the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Field. That certainly could be. But they also mentioned telecom or IT infrastructure. I think there's a good theory that if this is military, if this is Chinese, if it is all on the up and up, that this could have been a dry run for an EMP attack. For years, for decades now, guys sitting in trailers with a radio with tinfoil hat and ham radio have been warning us, and we should have been listening to us because they have a lot more sense than most people, have been warning about an EMP attack. I'm not near as concerned about a nuclear weapon. I'm not near as concerned about invasion. I'm not even concerned about the economy as much as an EMP attack that would shut our grid down. And some people are saying that this was a dry run to see where would be the best place. Now, the New York Times reported that the balloon came from China.
China. You take China. China. I love them. China. I have to have my China.
Across the Aleutian Islands and through northwestern Canada before reaching Montana. Now, I'm going to digress here. It's interesting if you look on a globe, the flight path seems very, very awkward and stinted. However, if you take that globe and lay it out on a piece of paper, it makes a little bit more sense. But I digress. What's interesting about the balloon is that it didn't just drift. It zigzagged, almost as if it were under control. Now, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Miao Ning said China was trying to verify the situation. I would like to emphasize that until the facts are clarified, speculation and hype will not be helpful to the proper resolution of the issue, she stated to Reuters. Now, as of February 4th, 2023, well, Biden, that great presidential leader that we have,
bridge over the Holly River. Look, in Warsaw, or should be
with all his cognitive skill and decision-making power, decided that it was time to shoot down the spy balloon.
I told them to shoot it down.
The U.S. military shot down on February 4th a suspected Chinese spy balloon after it drifted off the East Coast near the Carolinas. The Pentagon confirmed this. Again, it was fascinating that they shot it down in the water. China at the time expressed strong dissatisfaction and protest against the decision, accusing the U.S. of, quote, overreacting and, quote, seriously violating international practice. President Joe Biden described the mission as a success. He said he ordered the military to shoot it down as soon as possible when he was briefed Wednesday. U.S. officials say the balloon was being used for surveillance. Okay. And that it was spotted over the continental U.S. and it was used to spy and surveil. What exactly, we don't know, and we probably will never know. Now, it was absolutely handled incorrectly. We had to have seen this thing coming over Canada. We had to, with our technology, have observed it coming into Montana. We don't know what it was. We don't know if it was carrying a dirty bomb. We don't know if it was carrying more viruses from Wuhan. We don't know if it was an EMP. So it should have been downed immediately. The risk to the entire nation was far greater than the risk to the potential collateral damage of people on the ground. You would have to make that call. So everybody was scrambling around going, what in the world is going on? This is stupid. This guy is he's ready to go to fight Corn Pop at any time, any place, anywhere.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
But he's letting the Chinese bring a balloon all across the continental United States. So as per standard operating procedure, whenever in doubt, throw Donald Trump under the bus. That's right. The man who has been out of office, the man who has nothing to do with this, well, he now becomes the new whipping boy. CNN reported that a senior U.S. defense official said Saturday, and that's always code. Whenever they say a senior something another, that means it's a pile of horse manure.
That is one big pile.
They're making it up. They're just coming up with it. But it sounds really important to you. A senior defense official. Who, what, when, where? It's just a senior official. Take our word for it. A senior U.S. defense official said Saturday there were 3 instances during the Trump administration when China briefly flew a surveillance balloon over the continental United States. The People's Republic of China government surveillance balloons transited the continental United States briefly at least 3 times during the prior administration and once that we know of at the beginning of this administration, but never for this duration of time. Now, a couple problems with that. Number one, since this article, which came out February 4th, since this article, it has been, no pun intended, shot down. Non-partisan, non-biased officials within the Trump administration have said, no, that didn't happen. That is not true. But the other thing that's interesting is sometimes if you leave a liar alone long enough, the liar will convey or give you hints that they're lying. Case in point. Listen to this phrase. That it happened, the balloons came on this article, prior administration, once that we know of at the beginning, but never for this duration of time. Now, never for this duration of time. So if you have these balloons drifting, how would they be able to adjust the duration of time? Well, the answer is they're not drifting. What's interesting about it is that one person said, Epser served as a Secretary of Defense under Trump. He said this, quote, "I don't ever recall somebody coming into my office or reading anything that the Chinese had a surveillance balloon above the United States. I would remember that for sure." Well, of course. But what's even more fascinating about the whole thing is that it's not just America. Apparently, on another article from CNN, February 4th, Colombian Air Force investigating the origin of a balloon sighted in airspace. That's right, Colombia. The Colombian Air Force has confirmed that an object with characteristics similar to a balloon was detected in its airspace February 3rd. The Air Force said in a statement Friday it is coordinating with other countries and institutions to establish the origin of the balloon, which has already left Colombia's airspace after being tracked by its national defense system. The object, quote, "did not represent a threat to national security and defense or to air safety." The object was detected in the early hours of February 3rd, above 55,000 feet in the northern sector of the country, moving at an average speed of 25 knots, the statement said. So what's happening here? What's going on? Well, the question now becomes, is this something that's happening globally? Or maybe not globally, maybe in the Western American hemisphere. Not only did Colombia spot something, but apparently February 4th, we don't know if it's related or unrelated, Costa Rica confirmed sightings of a second balloon over San Jose. Costa Rica on Saturday evening confirmed there had been sightings earlier this week of a large white observation balloon flying over the capital, San Jose. The balloon was similar in appearance to the Chinese balloon shot down by the United States. The Director General of Costa Rica Civil Aviation, Fernando Naranjo Elizondo, told CNN that the airship spotted above San Jose on Thursday was, quote, "not a balloon that originated from Costa Rica." In other words, it wasn't a kid just celebrating and having a great time and the balloon got away. Noting that the balloon did not come down on Costa Rican territory, he said there were no plans for further investigations because the balloon had disappeared. Do we have two balloons, one from Colombia somehow getting to Costa Rica, or do we have three balloons? Do we have a balloon over America, a balloon over South America, a balloon over the islands? Is there a balloon over Central America? How much is going on and how much do we not know? Well, according to CNN and other articles, inside Biden's decision to take care of, quote unquote, the Chinese, The story says that when U.S. President Joe Biden learned of a suspected Chinese spy balloon, that it was drifting in the stratosphere 60,000 feet above Montana, his first inclination was to take it down. However, as we mentioned earlier, he was told not to. Now, the massive white orb, the balloon, was carrying a payload. Now, this is what's fascinating. When you think of a balloon, you need not think of some little kid balloon or helium balloon, because the payload it was carrying was the size of 3 coach buses. Now let that sink in. I have no doubt whatsoever that the Chinese want to spy on us, but do they need, what do you possibly fit in 3 coach buses? 3 coach buses. That's a lot of camera. That's a lot of film. I'm being facetious. That isn't a camera, and that isn't film, and that isn't espionage. That's fascinating. Exactly what was in that payload, we don't know. Now, we also know this. It had been floating, notice the phrase again, floating in and out of American airspace for 3 days by the time Biden was briefed. In and out? What was it, zigzagging? Wind, back up, down, in and out? The arrival had gone unnoticed by the public as it floated eastward over Alaska, where it was first detected by the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and that's NORAD. And let us not forget also that HARP is in that area as well, too. NORAD continued to track and assess the balloon's path and activities, but military officials assign little importance to the intrusion into American airspace. Does that sound rational or reasonable to you? That the NORAD, the U.S. military, said, we got this payload coming in, we got this balloon, and it doesn't have a little spy camera on it. It's got a payload of the size of 3 coach buses, but don't worry, no harm, no foul, just let it go wherever it wants to go.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here.
That doesn't sound rational, does it? Well, because it's not. At the time, they said the balloon was not assessed to be an intelligence risk or physical threat. How do you know that? This time, however, the balloon kept going high over Alaska, into Canada, back toward the U.S., attracting little attention from anyone looking up. It would take 7 days before the balloon first entered U.S. airspace. And then an F-22 fighter jet fired a heat-seeking missile into the balloon on the opposite end of the country, sending its equipment and machinery tumbling into the Atlantic Ocean. The balloon's week-long American journey, which, hang on a second, heat-seeking. Now, heat-seeking, going after that balloon. That's interesting to think about what was firing that balloon and keeping it going. Anyway, I digress. Maybe in a comment on this, if you have some information about what it would take to keep a high-grade military balloon aloft and what that heat-seeking would be tracked, I'd be interested in your feedback. Email us, put us in the comment section below. If you have some military experience on this or know what it would be. I'm thinking about the old, the balloons where we get in, you pull the trigger, the fire goes up and up we go. Is that what they were doing? That seems kind of low-grade, lowbrow to me, but interesting. The balloon's week-long, the article says, week-long American journey from the remote Aleutian Islands to the Carolina coast left a wake of shattered diplomacy, furious reprisals from Biden's political rivals, and a preview of a new era of escalating military strain between the world's 2 largest economies. It also raised questions about why it wasn't shot down sooner and what information, if any, it scooped up along its path. Of course, the White House defended it. Officials say Biden took responsible action by waiting to down the suspected balloon. Well, what's interesting is we are seeing a pretext for war. And what we may be seeing here is a buildup of some kind. And this is not the first time we have seen these kind of things. We're going to do a Soul Trap episode in detail on something that took place that very, very few people realize, and it's called the Battle of Los Angeles. One article states that in the frantic weeks that followed the Pearl Harbor attack, many Americans believed that enemy raids on the continental United States were imminent. On December 9th, 1941, unsubstantiated reports of approaching aircraft had caused a minor invasion panic in New York City and sent stock prices tumbling. On the West Coast, inexperienced pilots and radar men had mistaken fishing boats, logs, and even whales for Japanese warships and submarines. Tensions were high, and they only grew after U.S. Secretary of War Henry Stimson warned that American cities should be prepared to accept occasional blows from enemy forces. Now listen to this. Just a few days later on, February 23, 1942, a Japanese submarine surfaced off the coast of Santa Barbara, California, and hurled over a dozen artillery shells at an oil field and refinery. While the attack inflicted no casualties and caused only minor damage, it marked the first time that the mainland United States had been bombed during World War II. The day after the oil field raid, paranoia and itchy trigger fingers combined to produce one of the most unusual home front incidents of the war. It began on the evening of February 24, 1942, when naval intelligence instructed units on the California coast to steel themselves for a potential Japanese attack. We'll get into this story down the road, and if you want to learn more about it, stay tuned to the Soul Trap. We'll give you some more information, a whole show on this. My point is, did you study at public school or in any school that we actually had an attack from a Japanese submarine? You didn't. I'll guarantee you didn't. Some of you did because you're a bright audience, but most of us didn't know that. But it happened. What happened here? Look at the video. Watch the video. What is this going across the United States? A balloon with a camera because the Chinese want to see where things are? Why would they have to do that? Why would they need to use a balloon? They've got spies sleeping with our senators. They've got spies in every nook and cranny. They've got TikTok, TV. My goodness alive, LeBron James is in their back pocket.
It's LeJean Brames.
Why would they need a balloon to figure out where you and I could figure out by simply driving or looking at Google Earth? And why would they need a balloon with a payload size of 3 coach buses? I think it could have been a dry run. Let me say this and then I'll move on. There is this idea among Christians today that because if you believe in the rapture, we're not going to go through any problems, and that's not true. I have said it over and over and over again. I believe in the New Testament rapture of the church. I believe that the tribulation period is a distinct time period for the Jew and Gentile. We are raptured out as the body of Christ prior to Daniel's 70th week. But that does not mean that we are inoculated. We are immune somehow from the trials and tribulations of this world. I believe that war is brewing. It is brooding. And we may be just around the corner from a global conflict. I'm going to tell you this, and you mark my words. There are some people that are hanging their hat on Donald Trump. Donald Trump will get us out of war. Donald Trump will get us out of the Ukraine. I remind you, Donald Trump was the one that got us in to COVID vaccines. Donald Trump is the one that allowed the country to be shut down. Right or wrong, good or bad, I like a lot of what he does, but he's the one that paraded Anthony Fauci out in front of everybody. He's the one that paraded all of these vaccines out and still stands by them today, though we have people dropping dead around us all over. Be careful. Be careful. Satan is very wise. And I had an old friend who always used to say, whenever you see something going on the right hand, you better watch what the left hand is doing. We may be prepping for war, and it may be war that comes, not at the last Trump, but at the next Trump.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
The U.S. State Department has confirmed the suspected Chinese spy balloon was operating with electronic surveillance.